for our listeners, Joe is, of course, with Facebook Live right now. He presents the La Liga, and he is more than anything else a hardcore Newcastle United fan. That's right. We don't have Arsenal representation on this show just yet, but we will go as far as Newcastle. That is the mantra of the corner flag. And Joe, let's get straight into it. I want to start talking about, well, Newcastle United, because something has happened up in the the northeast of England. I don't know if you've heard about this, Joe,
No.
but Kylian Mbappe might be transferring to Newcastle United soon. No, we're of course talking about the takeover. Mike Ashley's reign has finally ended. It was a long drawn process. It took way too long for many Newcastle fans' liking, but it has finally happened, and the new ownership has been installed with the Saudi Arabian PIF fund. So first off, as a journalist and as a fan, what are your opinions and thoughts on this takeover?
Relief. First and foremost, irrespective of whether I'm a journalist or whether I'm a fan, on both counts, relief. The reason it's relief is because when it was first mooted a year ago, or well, it's over a year ago, isn't it? It's nearly 18 months ago since we first heard about this.
Yeah.
Like many of these things, as time goes on, you get more and more doubtful as to whether it will ever happen.
Yeah.
The only thing that was keeping the dream alive and the hope alive was things such as the arbitration case. So, for example, Mike Ashley himself wouldn't go to court if he was like, look, they're never going to buy this club, we'll move on to the next buyer. Amanda Staveley, she would not go through the whole process. And remember, we had arbitration as well, some of it which was instigated by the fans, which was a fabulous thing. So she wouldn't continue to bang the drum if she felt the Saudis had pulled out and were not interested anymore. But it's all about time. And for me personally, I know a couple of very senior figures in Saudi Arabia. I can't mention their names. They kept messaging me and saying, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But as time went on, you become less and less believing of that.
Yeah.
And for me, being based here in the Middle East and understanding the culture and understanding the mentality, for me, it was still all about time. And what I mean by that is all it takes is for another club to become available,
right,
whilst all of this nonsense is going on.
Right.
And I wobbled, I'll have to be honest with you, I wobbled about 3 months ago when there was rumors going around that Inter Milan were going to sell out completely, because there's 2 or 3 different investors in Inter Milan. They'd all agreed that they were going to sell completely, because remember, Saudi Arabia, I think, wants to buy or wanted to buy, forget about what happened last week, they wanted to buy a club in its entirety. They didn't want to buy a stake in a club.
Yeah.
So I was always worried about the Inter Milan deal, because I thought, one of the investors for a long time has wanted to sell their stake. The Chinese investor, I can't remember the name. Suning, is it? Is it Suning?
Possibly, yeah.
So I knew that Saudi Arabia wouldn't get involved whilst just one investor wanted to sell. But when the rumors started to fly that maybe all of the investors were going to sell, that is what got my butt cheeks clenching.
But do you think they'd be interested in a club that's in the Serie A? Because obviously the Premier League's a lot more of a global brand and a lot more lucrative for anyone to get into.
I think it would depend on the deal. They're not stupid. Everyone calls them money bags. Well, yes, they've got a lot of money. Yes, the wealth fund, the PIF wealth fund, is huge. But at the end of the day, they're not going to overpay. So it's about the deal.
Yeah.
It's about the deal. It's like, if someone comes along and you're getting good value for money, a club, good value for money. I mean, why have they not bought Manchester United?
Right.
Right.
It's because the owners believe that it's worth 2 billion.
Yeah.
Is it 2 billion or 2.5 billion or whatever?
Somewhere around between 1 and 2.5, but it's definitely in the billions.
Yeah, it's definitely in the billions. And they feel, well, look, you've got to buy. So that's your initial outlay, 2 billion plus. Yeah. And then you've got to invest further in the club, Old Trafford is not getting any younger as a stadium.
Yeah.
The squad, well, it's a pretty decent squad, but you still need a few key stellar signings.
Yeah.
So, why have they not? They've got the money. Why not buy Manchester United? So So yeah, the doubt for me was always about the time. The longer it went on, the longer, there's more of an opportunity to go and buy someone else, buy another club.
Yeah. Now, when it first came into the news, like we said, 18 months ago, that the Saudi Arabian PIF fund was going to was looking into investing in Newcastle United. Of course, there was a lot of talks about the inherent human rights issues connected with the country of Saudi Arabia and what that means for the Premier League, and what are the optics like when the public investment fund of a nation is looking to invest in a Premier League club. And that was one of the main reasons why the Premier League rejected their initial bid. They didn't follow through with the owners test, I think is what it's called. And then now we're seeing it completely get backtracked. So what happened, do you think, and what changed?
It was, and always was, by the way, irrespective of anything that you've read or anything that you've heard, the rest of it is nonsense. It was only and always about piracy.
Right.
About beIN Sports piracy. It was not about human rights. It was not about separation of state, which was a huge part of the whole argument, that the Sovereign Wealth Fund is separate from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as a state. That was just all bullshit.
Right.
It was always about the piracy issue. And the reason it was about the piracy issue is because broadcast rights for football are in some cases flatlining at best, and in other cases declining at worst. Right. And beIN Sports is their biggest purchaser of their Premier League broadcast rights in the world.
Right.
And beIN Sports, because they're not run as a profit-making organization, they don't care if they lose money. It's the Qatari state.
Yeah.
They do not. For them, it was about ego. It was about the piracy issue. They wanted to make sure that Saudi could not take over Newcastle United, whilst Saudi Arabia was, in their eyes, blatantly pirating their content. And not only pirating their content, but all of the other stuff that went with that. So why is that important? It's important because if you're the Premier League, and remember, they've just renewed the domestic rights cycle for exactly the same money as they did before, the last rights cycle. We don't know because we're busy in the process of the next international rights cycle for the various countries. Some countries already gone down and the deal's been done. And just to put that in perspective, in the Middle East here, Serie A does not have a rights broadcaster. So this rights cycle, for the first time, they partnered with YouTube and basically are putting their games for free just to maintain a presence in this region, this particular region. So beIN Sports gave up the rights to Serie A, said it's not worth it. Again, they talked about piracy and said, look, we're not bidding anymore. So the piracy was the issue. Don't you think it's a coincidence that when the piracy was resolved and announced, that within 24 hours, Newcastle United is bought?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
No, absolutely.
So all of the rest of it about human rights and about separation of state, it was never. And I understand the Premier League's position. It's like, if this is our biggest client, we have to keep them happy.
No, 100%.
Yeah, makes sense.
100%. But the questions about human rights are still there, even though the issue was primarily about piracy. And whether the Premier League wanted to, sweep that under the carpet by saying, "Oh, it's nothing to do with the piracy bit. It's just because we are not sure about the fund being separate from the state, and the state that has human rights violations in its history, in its very recent history, in fact,
and present,
and present." But those questions are still there because those arguments still exist. Now, for the Premier League, which is championing itself as an organization that stands for everything that is right in the world, whether we are talking about the Rainbow Laces campaign, whether we're talking about Kick It Out,
football for all is what they always say,
taking a knee before every match. Do you think this is a bit of a hypocritical sort of behavior from the Premier League?
In the real world, yes. In reality, yes, in the real world, it is a bit hypocritical from them. And I'll tell you why. And you're going to see me tonight bouncing between hardcore fan and trying to be a
Yeah.
broadcaster. And
That's why we have you here.
That's why
it's not going to work. I'm doing pretty well so far. I'm starting off, yes, nice and professional. No, look, when it comes to all that kind of stuff, and bearing in mind, anything that ever goes the full distance ends up in a court. And it's always an argument on one side and an argument on the other, and the judge makes a decision. Putting my Newcastle United hat on, right, so go and look at some of the other top clubs. Chelsea, Roman Abramovich is the best mate of Putin. And what's Putin doing? He's just put his biggest political opponent in jail and given him a life sentence. Yeah. So where's the separation there? You say, oh, well, yeah, maybe. Leicester City, you know, Thailand, some of the nonsense that's going on there, they can't point fingers. Yeah. Leverage, you talk about with the American owners, you can talk about slavery and workers' rights in the UAE, which is obviously Manchester City. So, you know, there's not one of certainly the big clubs that can say, hold on a second, we are squeaky clean, and therefore this is absolutely outrageous. Now, coming back to the original question was about the Premier League. So the Premier League, you know, if they go down that road, you could argue in a court of law that you have in your league right now other clubs representation of certain states and certain governments and certain countries that are also doing things that are unacceptable. By the way, do you want to go the whole hog? We can talk about the shirts that fans wear, made in sweatshops in China and Bangladesh and places like this. They don't have workers' rights. So you know, how far do you want to go with the whole thing? That's the biggest issue, in my opinion. And you'll hear me boiling my blood quite a few times tonight about Qatar.
Go for it. Go for it.
Oh, I fucking hate them. No, and I'll tell you why. I'm being a bit facetious, but I do have genuine hardcore feeling behind it. First and foremost, buying the World Cup and everything that happened that led to that. Now that's from a financial perspective. And then the other side of it, as you guys know, because you've watched me for years, I've been broadcasting to Nepal.
We see the flag behind you.
Country, to India, to Bangladesh, to Sri Lanka, and the body bags that have come back from Qatar because of that World Cup. I'm sorry, every single time that I speak about it, it breaks my heart, because it's like the Amnesty Internationals of this world. And Amnesty International do a great job, but I'm just focusing on this particular issue. The do-gooders of this world will talk more about the killing of a journalist, and we're talking about Jamal Khashoggi here, and it's not right. It is an outrageous act. They'll talk more about that, and that'll get more headlines and more column inches than the 6,500. By the way, the 6,500 that we know about. Body bags that have come back to build Qatar's World Cup. What do you think is right? Are you telling me that one life has got more value than another life? It boils my blood when that sentiment is even raised.
No, 100%. I mean, you're absolutely right. There's no big.
Sorry to interrupt you. So, if you want to go back to your question, you put the Premier League into that, who in effect have sided with beIN Sports, right? Didn't want to jeopardize that relationship. So now where do you draw the line? Now people say that Qatar don't have an interest in the Premier League. Well, not in terms of a football club, they don't. But they do as the biggest international client of the Premier League. So the Premier League is sided with a state-owned broadcaster, and that state has sent 6,500 healthy young men in body bags back to Nepal, back to Bangladesh, back to India, back to Sri Lanka. You think that's right? That's not right.
Not at all. Not at all. And you know, you hit the nail absolutely on the head, because it's a little bit sanctimonious for people to look at Newcastle and be like, oh, how can they accept money from the Saudi Arabian state? What is even the difference between the PIF and the state of Saudi Arabia? Yada, 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 when all of this is happening around. And that's why.
No, I think I think you can't have nice billionaires. You can't have billionaires and clean money.
Yeah.
Nobody
Yeah.
gets to $1 billion without doing something really horrible.
Is
Yeah.
that why
Yeah.
we're all nice? Because we're
Exactly.
not billionaires?
No, which
Yeah,
is why
nice and broke.
which is why I make it a point to never hit $1 billion. I will make sure that I
You don't
never.
want to be a bastard.
No, I don't want to make that much money. I'll make sure I could have made $1 billion yesterday, but I chose niceness over
Yes, I know. Me
a
too.
fat bank balance. Yeah. No, but just going back to what I was saying, that is the reason why I think it's unfair that Newcastle fans, and fans primarily, forget the club, forget anybody who's sitting in the boardroom of the club, anybody who's making decisions at the club. Newcastle fans, and there are a few of them in India as well. Uh, I think it's unfair that they're being targeted, because you have to look at it from the Newcastle fans' point of view. 14 years of Mike Ashley have been hell. And we on this show and on many other football podcasts and shows all over the world keep making fun of Mike Ashley for the way he's run the club into the ground. Like this club, when I started following the Premier League, Newcastle United was a Champions League regular. So Bobby Robson's time there,
Yeah.
it was fantastic. It's a massive stadium. Everybody knew Newcastle United to be a top four side, and they've gone through a relegation in recent times. They've two relegations. Sorry, they've been in and out.
I left in 2005. Left
Right.
Newcastle United in 2005 because I was working for the club. If you'd said to me in 2005, Newcastle won't be in European competition again, and won't be in the Champions League again, I would have said, what?
So it's unfair because the fans have waited for this for so long. This is a new dawn, as the cliche goes, for them. And what have you spoken to other Newcastle fans about this? What's the general atmosphere?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, my phone has been hot. Thank God that WhatsApp didn't go down on Thursday night. It's like, goodness me, I think the Newcastle fans would have burned Facebook's headquarters to the ground. And no, every single one of them is relieved. Everyone has actually bizarrely been in a state of shock because it happens so quickly. Everyone has been, we've spent a year and a half talking about this bullshit and court cases and like I said at the beginning of this chat, as time went on, people were more and more like, yeah, it's not going to happen. Then bang, all of a sudden, within 24 hours, the beIN Sports thing is sorted out, the deal's done, and Amanda Staveley is walking through the doors of St James's Park. There's still a state of shock. There really is still a state of shock. And most of the friends that I'm speaking to, and I've been messaging a few colleagues, former colleagues from Newcastle United, they haven't even got their heads round to what next. Well, what are we doing next? I'm throwing the questions out there saying, right, which manager should we sign and which player? And they're like, oh yeah, we need to start thinking about that. Because it's been so sudden and such a shock, and we've had such a long period of like, not gonna happen.
Yeah. So before we get to the before we get to the manager's bit, I just wanted to bring up one of the parting shots that Mike Ashley gave. And I read this on a news website, where he mentioned that the offer that was accepted by him was actually slightly lower, and there was a higher offer that he rejected from somebody else, I think. But he went with this one because it might have been lower and might have been a lesser of a profit for him. But he felt it was his duty to do right by the fans. Now, obviously, everybody's calling bullshit and saying, yeah, that's because the lower offer meant you got the money up front, as opposed to a larger offer where you would get it in many installments. So business-wise, it just made more sense to get the money up front. But that's Mike Ashley for you. He still has a weird savior complex.
Yeah, and by the way, that I don't know whether that's true or it's not true. If you were asking me, what do you think? Is it plausible? Absolutely, it's plausible. And I'll tell you why it's plausible. Because in my time, I've been here 16 years, based in the Middle East. You wouldn't believe how many shysters, charlatans, bullshitters, Walter Mitty's fantasists that have crossed my path in the 16 years wanting to buy Newcastle United Football Club, and obviously because they know my association, having worked there, saying, you know, can you put me in contact? Can you? People have actually shown me, and many of them, either they don't have the money or don't have enough money, because remember, football's gone into a much bigger sphere now.
Yeah.
Right.
If you're a billionaire, you haven't got enough money to buy a Premier League or an elite European football club anymore. But it's into the tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions. It's got to a point where I'm just like, I don't even waste my time entertaining them anymore, you know, because I know that they're just shysters. They're just, I'm like, I can't get that word out. So I've got no doubt that Mike Ashley may well have had a better bid, but as you quite correctly pointed out, it would have been some sort of nonsense about, well, we can pay you this now, and then, you know, we'll give you this amount down the line, and we'll give you an installments over 5 years. And of course, that's well and good. They put the money, they put the 50 million up front now, the 50 million comes next year, and then things start to wobble.
Yeah.
Oh, they missed the third payment.
Yeah.
They missed the fourth payment, and then they're in court, and then.
Yeah.
So it's very, very plausible, but, you know, I'm sick of hearing these. Someone put in front of me once, it was a bank loan. It was a bank loan for, yes, it was a bank guarantee for €1 billion.
Wow.
Now, that means nothing.
Yeah.
It means that it's still a loan. It still has to be paid back, and it has to be paid back with interest.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the owners and directors test, the owners and directors test only came in after the Man City takeover, didn't it? It wasn't there before Man City. So when it comes to the owners and directors test, I don't care if you're the worst person on the planet, the best person on the planet, you know, a bastard, whatever the case may be. I want to know that you have the cash, not the money, the cash.
Yeah.
And if I was putting a stipulation into the owners and directors test, I would be saying things like, you must have, like a mortgage on a house, you must have minimum 80% cash and 20% you can borrow. So opposite to what you would put down on a house.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone should be allowed to buy a football club with the majority leverage and only a small amount, 10% of cash. I just don't think it should be possible, because that's where all of this other nonsense comes in.
Yeah.
And you're seeing it with a number of clubs. Portsmouth was the biggest disaster.
Right.
So the owners and directors test, to me, because it's my club, Manchester United is your club, Everton, Chelsea we've got tonight, and Liverpool we've got tonight. I don't want someone who is robbing from Peter to pay Paul to keep my club alive. And then what do they start doing? They start dipping their hand into the cookie jar. Yeah. So they start, instead of reinvesting in the stadium and the training facilities and the playing squad, they start dipping into the profits of the club and say, I just, you know, this loan hasn't. And that's the situation with Manchester United.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a horrific situation.
Yeah.
And by the way, Manchester United has got away with it over the last decade. And this is really important for you boys to understand, and really important for your viewers and your audience to understand. Once you understand the business of football and how money flows through the system, you understand everything about your football club.
Right.
And you will either be overjoyed or you'll be worried. What worries me about Manchester United? For the last decade, interest rates have been at historical lows.
Yeah.
Which means it doesn't matter that they've got all this leverage money. Not a problem.
Yeah.
What happens, as many are predicting in the business world, when inflation, which it currently is going to the moon?
Right.
The interest payments on those loans start to go to the moon with it. That's when you start to see defaults. That's when you start to see clubs going bankrupt. And before they go bankrupt, they sell their best players, all of them.
So a couple of days ago, there was news floating around that all the other 19 clubs in the Premier League have asked, or rather demanded, for an emergency meeting to discuss the Newcastle takeover. What was that about? but what was that about? What did they want to discuss? And what was the outcome of that meeting?
They want, well, first of all, they want to discuss why they didn't know anything about it. Because, like for all of us, it happened very, very quickly. It was It was accepted, the Premier League approved it, and everything happened in 24 hours, basically, and the whole thing was done and dusted in 48 hours. So they probably feel that they were not kept in the loop. The hard thing about that, of course, keeping 19 other clubs in the loop, is that things would leak. And then, potentially you might have other court cases launched that would stop it. I don't know. Other than sour grapes, I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah.
Because you got to remember that the Saudi wealth fund is bigger than all of the other owners of the 19 clubs
Largest
in the Premier League
combined.
put together.
Right.
Yeah.
Put together. So, look, let me ask you, right, who's your best player at Old Trafford?
Right now, would say Ronaldo, maybe
Ronaldo,
Bruno.
right, we'll have
Yeah.
him. He's gone in January. Okay, Akram, who's your best player?
I'd probably say Richarlison.
Right, so we're having him. He's leaving in January. Who's your best player at Anfield, in your opinion?
Carius, Lorius.
Good answer. But it's not going to wash with me. We're taking Mo Salah. He's gone in January. So, that's what let's be blunt about it. That's what they'll be thinking about right now.
Yes.
Oh, all of a sudden this money comes in. It happened exactly when Roman Abramovich came into the Premier League. It happened exactly when Manchester City came into the Premier League. Everyone thought that fees and wages and everything were flatlining, which they were at the beginning of the 2000s. And then all of a sudden Roman Abramovich comes in and just throws the money around. Then things kind of like plateaued out and steadied out and became a bit more stable. And then Man City come in and
Yeah.
Khalid Al-Mubarak comes in.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but talking about the players leaving January, do you think a lot of the players will move in Jan? Because while Newcastle do have very rich owners now, they are still in the relegation zone. And do you think you see big money? Well, the fact is they are.
Don't tell anyone.
Change that, Joe.
Did you say the R word?
I did.
I find that offensive.
But do you see big money players wanting to make the move in January? Because we all know the Jan window is a tricky one. Fees are a lot higher than usual.
Yeah, it's not what I would call a value window.
No.
Exactly.
But that's an impossible question to ask. It's like, how long is a piece of string? And the reason for that is there's certain players who, top players who would go in January, who are looking for a move, just looking to get out, whatever. But there are other players that, sorry?
Harry Kane.
Harry Kane? Well, we can discuss players individually, but say, for example, like a Coutinho. Barcelona are desperate to sell a Coutinho. Coutinho is the type of player who would go in January.
Yeah.
A Paul Pogba of this world, well, he's not really going to go in January. Would he go to Newcastle next summer? Yeah, quite possibly, but he's not going to move in January. So, it depends on the player, and every single player's name that you could mention would all be different. Different circumstance for each and every player. Harry Kane, you mentioned Harry Kane. He's never going to move in January, but he might go next summer.
And while Samuel Mtiti might be open to move to Newcastle this Jan because he'll be happy to move anywhere. Another question I had for you was that you touched on the manager topic briefly, and I think the most pressing question that has come out of this entire Newcastle takeover is, will Rafa Benitez leave Everton for Newcastle? That's all I care about. Come on, no.
Because you're asking, yes is the answer.
I'm out of here. I'm going for a haircut.
Yeah, just be careful. You're not allowed to step on the pitch.
Yeah.
So, no, it won't be Rafa Benitez. But it does need to be. Now, I don't know if you follow me on Twitter, but I know one or two of you do. As you probably saw today, I put out a survey, a poll, which was, what's more important, a marquee manager or a marquee player? And it was interesting that 87% came back and said marquee manager is more important. And I agree with them.
Yeah, I agree too. Yeah.
And the reason 100%. I agree with them is, if you're coming into a situation as new owners of likes of Newcastle, you don't have the carrot of Champions League or any European football to offer elite players.
Yeah.
Elite players. And elite players love being in the Champions League. In fact, as you know, I'm in contact with a number of agents in the UK from many of the big players. And they'll always tell me the first thing a player asks when they're moving to a club is what's their Champions League status, or what's their Champions League prospects?
Yeah.
What are they going to do in the Champions League next year? Have they qualified? Are they out of the group stage? Are they out of the knockout stage? Where are they in the league? Are they going to make it to the top 4 and get a Champions League spot? That's the first thing the elite players ask. Now, with Newcastle, you don't have that.
Yeah.
You don't have that carrot. So how else do you entice the players? Now, some of the fans, and this comes with 14 years of mediocrity and low expectation, some of the fans of Newcastle United are saying, oh, we should get in someone like Eddie Howe. He's a great coach. And he is. He's a brilliant coach. But Eddie Howe is never going to be able to manage the ego of Neymar or a Ronaldo in the dressing room. No disrespect to him.
Yeah.
So, you have to entice players with something else. Now, Zidane walks through the door, for example. Tell me what player in the world, elite player in the world, is going to say, I'm not going to play for Zidane. All of them will say, like, yeah, I'll go play for Zidane. Of course I will. And it's interesting historically, if you go back to the mid-90s when Newcastle United were at their nadir, go and ask the players from that era, the stellar players that were brought in the mid-90s. Every single one of them, almost to a man, would say they signed because of Kevin Keegan. He was their idol in the 1980s.
Yeah.
So you see how it comes around.
No, it definitely has to be changed from the top down, because, like you said, a Neymar isn't going to come. Forget Eddie Howe. A Neymar is not going to come to Newcastle United to be managed by Steve Bruce. That's just not going to happen.
I don't think Amog would go to Newcastle United to be managed by Steve Bruce.
I mean, he was a United legend. I'd love to meet him. But you mentioned Zidane, and Zidane is a possibility. He is looking for a job right now, as is Antonio Conte, who's another manager that's been thrown about. But Zidane specifically is somebody I want to talk about, because if that does happen, I just want to relish saying these words. But if that does happen, John Joe Shelby will be coached by Zinedine Zidane. Oh man, that just sounds so good. That just sounds so good.
Mixed up in the dressing room, wouldn't you? Are you Zidane? No, I'm John Joe Shelby. Oh, yeah, sorry.
I mean, we know that they both can give a mean headbutt, so they have something in common there. But yeah,
the coach is so important, in my opinion, to make a statement as a new owner.
Yeah.
But so, if it was your decision, who are your top 3 names
as coach?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, let's just clarify that particular aspect of it, because this is something that you well know with regards to Manchester United, and that is he coming in as a coach or as a manager? And they're two separate things. Oli really is a coach, which is a continental model. Ancelotti goes to Real Madrid. He's not buying the players. He's not deciding which players come in. The president is deciding that. So are Newcastle United going to go down that route where, the powers that be, the PIF fund or even Amanda Staley, decide the players that are coming in and he just has to put them together into a workable unit? Or is he actually going to be a coach and manager? So you have to clarify that first, but let's just assume that he's coming in to be a manager. I mean, Zidane, I would definitely put up there. I mean, look, I'm still in the euphoria. I'm still in the afterglow of what happened last week. I'm still punch drunk on what happened last week. So I'm even thinking, like, who says we can't poach Pep Guardiola for Man City? Who says?
I do.
Anything is possible. Anything is possible. And I'll tell you why. I mean, do I think Pep Guardiola is going to go from City to Newcastle anytime this season? No, probably not. But first of all, it's about hope. Secondly, maybe it's a little bit of fantasy as well. But also, you have to understand the mentality, and this is on a serious note, you have to understand the mentality of the guys in this region. When they go big, they go big. So who is available first and foremost? Well, there's not that many elite coaches that are available and out of work at the moment. We talked about Antonio Conte. But who is at a club that is under contract, but maybe things aren't smooth.
Ronald Koeman. Ronald Koeman.
Oh,
There you go.
come on.
The Barcelonafication of Newcastle will begin right there. All right.
Arsene Wenger.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Ooh, that would be
I
nice.
still
That
haven't
would be
fully answered
interesting.
your question. Who would be my top three? I'm so focused on Zidane. I mean, Conte, I would definitely put in there. So that would be 2. And then who would be the other one?
Sam Allardyce.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Because let's face it,
Relegation battle.
the first job at hand for whoever is to get out of the relegation zone. And who better? Who better than Big Sam?
But do you think Claudio Ranieri is currently regretting taking up the Watford job? Because he might be available in another 3-4 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're damn right. I mean, I don't know. You know, I'd have to sit down and think, and probably to get the third one, I'd have to sit down and think, and I'd probably have to get some gossip on the relationship between that manager and the board at this exact moment in time, or certainly over the next, few weeks.
Right.
We have your email address now, so I'll just send you my record on Football Manager. It's quite impressive. I wouldn't mind. Just being in your top 3, Joe, would make my week.
Yeah, you're in the shortlist.
He won the Champions League with Everton. Now
I mean, does it get any better?
That's an impressive CV.
That
All right.
is
We're running out of time in this first half of this episode. So anybody else have anything to ask Joe? All right, cool. That's it.
any players for sale?
So Fabian Delph, happily, I'd fly to Merseyside and drive him to Newcastle.
I know. Newcastle need a new keeper, and I think we'd want to sell Kepa. I think that'd be great.
Anthony Martial is amazing at close control. He has a mean finish on him. He's very silky, very elegant player.
Money, no object. And I'm not saying they would come, and especially Harry Kane, but money, no object and no issue. Let's say you could only sign 3 players. I would go for Oblak.
Nice.
Nice.
Kante. Sorry.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
N'Golo Kante. You win things with N'Golo Kante. That's how highly I regard him.
Yeah.
And Harry Kane.
Nice. That's a good spine. That's a very, very good spine.
If you could only sign 3,
yeah,
money, no object. I'm not saying those 3 would necessarily come, but I'm saying if you could sign 3, money, no object, that's the 3 that I would have.
And you would need to specify money, no object.
Yes. However, and I'm glad you've piped up, because guess who I forgot? Mo Salah. So now, now I'm wavering. Now I have to think, you know what? And I'm not joking here. I'm going to change Harry Kane for Mo Salah, and I'll tell you why. Number one, Harry Kane is going for trophies. No ifs or buts about that. Money's not his issue. He wants to move to a club for trophies. Well, let's be realistic. Newcastle United are not going to win Champions League and Premier League inside the next probably 3 years, because they won't have built that squad out to be that competitive. So, Mo Salah, he ticks the Arab box. He still hasn't agreed a contract yet, no?
Yeah,
he hasn't.
He hasn't agreed a contract. And also, he's won those titles. He's won the Premier League and he's won the Champions League with Liverpool. So he doesn't need to tick those boxes anymore. And Mo Salah is how old? 30, is it? Or 31?
Yeah, 31.
31. So once you get past 29, so you get to 30, any agent worth his salt will tell you have to be looking for the final big contract. Yeah. So let's say it's 5 years.
He's 29. He's 29.
Don't change his age right now, Mukesh. Don't change his age.
Mukesh grasping at straws here.
You're going to tell me, put it this way, he's closer to the end of his career than he is to the beginning of his career.
Yeah.
So his agent, if his agent is smart, and I'm sure he is smart, would be advising him right now, your next move has to be a big money move, because once you get through the thick of that contract, even if you don't do the full 5 years, even if you only do 3 years or 4 years, you're at 33, 34 years old, you're not going to get another big money move. Right. So, and the agent will have his own interests in that as well, which is commission.
Yeah. Right.
You've lost Mo Salah, Mukesh.
It's done. It's over.
Just shut up.
And I think the Saudis, and look, we don't know how much of a say they'll have in it, but they'll have a say.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if Mo Salah is in their top 3.
Right.
I mean,
Alright.
I'm guessing if the people below them want their heads to remain on their shoulders, they'll have a say.
Exactly. That's exactly how it works.
Ooh, that was close. Yeah. Ooh, that was too close for comfort.
Why are you not smiling? Oh, it's the beard. Is the beard? Maybe it's the beard. I can't see the smile.
He's imagining a life without Mo Salah.
Yeah.
He's-
Well,
he's-
Mukesh is currently ordering a Newcastle kit online.
Do you want to give me some notes on? Do you want to give me some notes on how it is as a fan when all your players go and you become a shit club?
I was trying.
All right. Thank you so much, Joe, for taking time out and talking to us, and for joining us on the Corner Flag yet again. You are a true friend of the flag. Thank you so much. I mean, this was a fantastic conversation.
It was a lovely, informative chat.
Yes, it's an absolute pleasure, boys, and I'm shocked to see you all so glum. I don't know why you're so glum. There seems to be a lack of joy in this world on the Corner Flag tonight.
No. I'm for one, I'm very happy that this has gone through. It's good competition. I want to see what happens with
Can you smell
Newcastle.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Hands are shaking. Hands are shaking a little bit.
No, and also the Goal movie franchise is one of my favorites, so I'm waiting for the reboot.
Of course, we're waiting.
Waiting for the reboot.
Did you know I'm in that?
Oh, really?
You are.
Yeah.
Wait,
You
I
can
need to
see-
read.
I'm not joking. You can see the back sort of side of my head in a press conference for approximately half a second. That's my claim to fame.
We are going to rewatch. We are
This
going to
is
rewatch.
not a word of a lie. The Goal movie was shot whilst I was at Newcastle United, and we were pulled in. Staff and other people around the club were pulled in as extras for various scenes. So I was in this press conference scene.
Nice.
So you probably have to freeze frame it. It's probably just one frame.
No,
Can
we're
you
gonna
give us
watch
a
it.
profile shot of you right now so we know what we're looking for?
There we go.
There
So
we
that
go.
with a little more hair, I'm guessing.
And it wasn't as grey either. It was before I met Budgie, so I was full
All right. Thank you so much, Joe, for joining us on this chat, and we will get in touch with you soon and have you back when Mo Salah finally makes his transfer to Newcastle United to talk about that, and we'll make sure that it's only Mukesh and you in that conversation. So that'll be great for us to hear. Thank you
And
so
please,
much.
please give Kevin Campbell my regards. Tell him I'm a huge fan and that we'd love to have him on the podcast.
Yes,
I
that
will.
would be great. That
I'll
would be
ask
great.
him. He'll probably say yes as well because he has nothing to do and all day to do it. So he has plenty of time.
That would be amazing. It would really be a dream come true for me. Mainly because then we'll only speak Everton, which doesn't happen too often on this podcast, sadly.
Yeah. All right. There we go. There we are. That's Joe Morrison on the Corner Flag. See you guys.